Part of the cinematic experience is the build-up to a film, and while for the most part as many details as possible are kept under wraps for as long as possible, casting news is typically something that can be discussed and dissected long before a film's release. As a result, it's easy for fans to spend too long imagining how a performance is going to turn out, only to be completely blindsided by the finished product. I'm Josh from Whatculture, and these are recent movie castings that had no right to be this good. First up, Miles Cairton as Sammy Sinners. There are certain directors in the world today who can seemingly do no wrong, which is no small feat. Even many of the greats have had missteps in their careers, but right now it seems as though Ryan Coogler is simply superhuman. From taking on the potential Pitfall spin-off that was Creed to bringing the global phenomenon Black Panther to life, Coogler turned in 2025 to the world of horror. And as with everything the man touches, it was pure gold. The cast was stellar, featuring the likes of Delroy Lindo, Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, and Michael B. Jordan, many of whom, in particular the latter, turned in career best performances. In theory then, an actor making their big screen debut should have been way out of their depth against this lot, but that couldn't have been further from the truth for Miles Cairton. The newcomer portrayed Sammy, cousin of the Smokestack twins, and one of the key protagonists of the story, seemingly completely at home as part of the impressive cast list while doing so. Not many could have pulled that off right out of the starting blocks, but there should be big things ahead for this young actor.
Do you also ever find yourself locked in the existential crisis of wanting to watch the 1985 classic Witness starring Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis, but you don't know where to begin? Because same. Me from the future? You dummy. If you wanted to watch the 1985 classic Witness directed by Peter Weir, all you had to do was sign up to Paramount Plus using the link in the video description. This limited time offer means it's just $2.99 for 2 months. That's $5 off the Essential tier and $10 off Paramount Plus with Showtime, which includes shows like Twin Peaks and Dexter: Original Sin. Witness and Twin Peaks? Sounds like the perfect remedy for those cold winter nights we're having. I'm gonna go sign up right now and ignore this grave violation of the laws of time and space. Sounds like a plan.
Next up, Jason Bateman as the Traveler, Carry On. It's not exactly uncommon for an actor to try and break type, and though it is slightly less common for that to be successful, it is certainly not unheard of. Of course, Bryan Cranston as Breaking Bad's Walter White is arguably the greatest example of this, but there are indeed others. Jason Bateman is widely known for his comedic roles, from Arrested Development to Horrible Bosses, and the likes of Game Night, The Switch, and The Change-Up. Though he has dabbled with more dramatic roles, such as Marty in Ozark, it's rare that he's ever played a true villain. But this is exactly what the actor did in 2024's Carry On. The Die Hard-esque airport caper was a fun, if flawed, holiday film. And while it showed a Taron Egerton at his scene-stealing best, casting Bateman as the villainous traveler was just a stroke of genius. This is something that audiences have never really seen before from him, and for all of his comedic parts, the man can sell morally corrupt. He was cold, controlling, condescending, and made for the perfect foil to Egerton's heroic TSA agent, Ethan Kopech. So yeah, more of bad guy Bateman, please. Hollywood, do us a favor. Next up, Robert Downey Jr. as Lewis Strauss, Oppenheimer. Now, the intention of this list certainly isn't to suggest that any of the actors featured here are in any way bad. The majority have simply become known for playing a specific kind of character and doing it well. Robert Downey Jr., for example, is an exceptional actor and was one of the biggest reasons for the success of the MCU, particularly in those early days. It is no hyperbole to say that without Robert Downey Jr., the biggest movie franchise in history could have fallen flat. He was sensational as Tony Stark for all of those years, but RDJ's next role after Avengers Endgame was another attempt at a charismatic leading man for a franchise starter in Doolittle. Hardly a promising start to his post-comic book career, and yet 4 years later, he was receiving an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor after placing Lewis Strauss in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Of course, if Nolan casts an actor, then there is clearly a reason for it. But could anyone have predicted that Downey would have been able to shed all of that natural charm and likability to play someone as snaky as Strauss? As Strauss, the actor was just immense, a standout in a film full of standouts, rightly earning himself all the plaudits that he received. Next up, Chukwudi Iwuji as the High Evolutionary, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Sticking with the MCU theme for just a second, even back in its Phase 3 glory days, the franchise had an issue with its villains. With certain exceptions, too many rogues were portrayed as forgettable afterthoughts that brought little more to the screen than conflict for the sake of conflict. Guardians of the Galaxy's Ronan the Accuser is one such bad guy, and while the sequel certainly improved in this department with ego, Volume 3 outdid itself with the High Evolutionary. Of course, James Gunn is known for working with his friends over and over again, and so it was not necessarily a surprise that he brought Chukwudi Iwuji from playing Peacemaker's Mern over to Marvel. But could anyone have genuinely expected him to have become one of the consensus best villains of the multiverse saga? Iwuji was great in Peacemaker for sure, but you couldn't have said that he was exactly a standout, particularly next to the likes of John Cena, Jennifer Holland, Danielle Brooks, and Freddie Stromer. And so when Gunn announced that he had been cast as, quote, the role most every big-name actor in Hollywood wanted, end quote, you'd have been forgiven for thinking that there may have been better options out there. However, Iwuji knocked it out the park as the High Evolutionary immediately, as one of the most heinous and detestable villains, not just in the multiverse saga, but in the entire MCU. The actor has been doing great work for years now, but this film gave him the spotlight to fully shine to that wider audience. Next up, Ariana Grande as Galinda, Wicked. When casting characters that have been known and loved for as long as the likes of Galinda and Elphaba, particularly after they have been played with unanimous and universal acclaim for so many years on stage, there was always going to be scrutinizing eyes on Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. Of course, both of them utterly soared in the roles, but this may not have been expected so much from the former, who was truly taking the biggest step of her acting career to date. No one was ever going to doubt that Ariana Grande could pull off the singing side of playing Galinda, but the character is so complex and multi-layered that a more seasoned actor would have been considered, particularly with the list of others who auditioned for the role. Grande's acting resume was still relatively short at the time, with the major highlights outside of her childhood fame on Nickelodeon being Don't Look Up and Scream Queens. Nothing against those projects, of course, but to go from that to playing one of the biggest characters in one of the biggest movies of the year and nailing every single aspect from the comically self-obsessed pretty mean girl to the emotional and supportive best friend and earning an Oscar nomination for it is insanely great work. Next up, Austin Butler as Feyd Rautha Harkonnen, Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve's Dune was huge when it released, and with the sequel came impressive additions to the already stacked cast, with the likes of Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, and Anya Taylor-Joy joining the fray. Another new face was Austin Butler, though you may not have recognized it by the time he appeared in 2024. There's just no getting around this one. Butler is a handsome, charismatic guy, something that has always been understandably leaned into for the majority of his film roles, and something that you would have thought may have rendered him unsuitable for such a villainous brute. However, this is exactly why Villeneuve looked to cast him in the first place. Reaching a place that he had not been to before, Butler turned into a truly unsettling character as the remorseless and merciless villain in the Dune sequel. Though no one but the director likely appreciated how important his rock star image, to quote him directly, was to the role beforehand. Next up, Ryan Gosling as Ken, Barbie. Sometimes all it takes is a first look at a movie or a character for potential audiences to decide whether it'll be any good or not. First impressions mean a lot, and Ryan Gosling's casting in Barbie didn't exactly go down brilliantly. Margot Robbie as Barbie inspired, and a decision nobody could have argued with. Gosling as Ken, though, not so much. This one took a bit more convincing, and the first look at the character with the bleached blonde hair didn't help matters. This was, of course, when no one could have predicted what a thought-provoking smash hit Barbie would have ultimately become. and the crucial role both Gosling and Ken would have played in it. Neither brought to the screen what anyone would have expected in the best possible way, as an Oscar nomination wouldn't have even been dreamed of by the most ardent defenders of this casting when it was first announced. Aside from the awards buzz, the character became something of a pop culture sensation, arguably even more so than Barbie herself, which kind of backs up the entire point of the film, by the way. But Ryan Gosling's casting was ultimately perfect opposite Margot Robbie, and it's difficult to say whether Barbie would have seen the same success without either of them, though you may not have envisioned seeing that about Ken beforehand. Next up, Dwayne Johnson as Mark Kerr, the smashing machine. Generally speaking, audiences know what they can expect from a movie and a role of Dwayne Johnson's. The tough guy, not too far away from his WWE days, has been perfectly embodied by the likes of Luke Hobbs, Dr. Smolder Bravestone, and a plethora of other meatheads. You could look at an image of any Johnson character and it's become a meme that you have no idea which movie it's from because they all look the same. However, in 2025, the People's Champion branched out to do something he had rarely done and tested himself with a layered character of far more depth than his usual offering. As Mark Kerr, Johnson's physique and wrestling experience may have made sense for the role, but never has he truly showcased the chops to tell such a powerful and emotional story, particularly when opposite the always outstanding Emily Blunt, who by all rights should have acted circles around him. The physical side of things Rocky could do in his sleep, but for the real depth of the movie and for it to work, he brought out a side to him that we've never seen before. And it's arguably now less puzzling that he's being cast as the lead for the next Martin Scorsese picture. Next up, Sean Penn as Colonel Lockjaw, One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another has been the cinephile hit of 2025. But even the most ardent of Paul Thomas Anderson fans probably didn't expect to be as impressed as they were by Sean Penn's turn as Colonel Lockjaw. When the stacked cast was announced pre-release, and even following the first trailers, most fans were convinced that the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio, Benicio del Toro, and Tiana Taylor were primed to give incredible performances, which turned out to be true and then some in the finished film. After a decade of delivering fine but unmemorable turns though, Penn felt like the odd one out. It was a surprise then that not only was he as good as the rest, but also the easy standout potential future awards nominee. His character pushes so much of the narrative forward, and while his role as an evil, corrupt military man could have been played straight and gotten the job done, Penn brings such a defining, creepy patheticness to the character that makes his every appearance on screen an uneasy one. He's a deplorable character in every way that he should be, but it's that uneasy energy that comes to define him. While the film invites you to laugh at his desperate, self-serving attempts to grasp power and be accepted by his fellow bigots, he's still a threatening, capable villain that keeps the tension high. It really is a singular performance, and one that nobody expected to be this weird and convincing before sitting in the theater. And finally, we have Liam Neeson as Frank Drebin Jr., the Naked Gun. Creating a successful reboot and/or legacy sequel can be beyond tricky even at the best of times, but to bring the Naked Gun into 2025 seemed like an impossible task, largely thanks to the unique and goofy comedic style and the boots of Leslie Nielsen that simply could not be filled by anyone. Whoever was cast to lead such a film would have had a difficult act to follow, and Liam Neeson was certainly a choice out of left field. Sure, he has shown his comedic side on occasion in the likes of A Million Ways to Die in the West, and brief but hilarious cameos in Ted and Derry Girls, but this was unlike anything he had done before. As Frank Drebin Jr., however, Liam Neeson was an unmitigated triumph. He threw himself into the silliness of the role perfectly, he had great chemistry with Pamela Anderson, and he found the right balance between playing the scene seriously while still being funny. After all, before Leslie Nielsen was cast as Dr. Rumek in Airplane, he was not known as a comedic actor, and by the time of The Naked Gun, he was playing up to the silliness of everything just a little bit more, in the same way that Neeson did here. This was a strategy that worked back then, and against all odds, it worked now as well. So that's our list. Are there any similar castings I missed off here? And if you want more videos like this, click one of the videos on screen right now.